The receipt was for $4,200, a wire transfer fee from First Capital Bank to something called Ridgeline Holdings LLC, dated 3 weeks ago. I found it tucked inside the back cover of my wife's planner while looking for our insurance card on a Tuesday evening in October. That's how it starts sometimes. Not with lipstick on a collar or a mysterious text at midnight, with a receipt. I'm Nathan, 43 years old. For 15 years, I worked as a forensic accountant for the FBI, tracing money through shell companies, offshore accounts, and every dirty trick in the book. Drug cartels, Ponzi schemes, corrupt politicians, I've unwound them all. 3 years ago, I left the bureau to become CFO of a fintech startup in Austin, Texas. Better hours, better money, a chance to actually watch my son grow up. My wife Megan was a real estate attorney. Smart, ambitious, connected. She ran in circles. I never cared to join charity galas, country club brunches, networking dinners where everyone smiled too wide and meant too little. We'd been married 11 years. Our son Cooper had just turned 7. And until that Tuesday in October, I thought we were solid. Not perfect, but solid. Ridgeline Holdings LLC. I sat at the kitchen table staring at that name while Megan was upstairs putting Cooper to bed. In 15 years of financial forensics, I'd learned that legitimate transactions don't hide. They don't use generic LLC names that sound like they were picked from a random business name generator. They don't involve $4,200 wire transfer fees, which meant the principal amount was substantial, probably 6 figures. I didn't confront her. That's not how you work a case. You follow the money first, and the money always talks. The next morning, after Megan left for her office and Cooper's school bus pulled away, I sat down with my laptop and started pulling threads. Joint tax returns first. Megan handled our finances. She'd insisted on it early in our marriage, claiming her legal background made her more qualified. I'd agreed because I trusted her, and because after spending all day chasing other people's dirty money, the last thing I wanted was to audit my own household. That trust cost me. Within 2 hours, I'd found discrepancies going back 18 months. Cash withdrawals of $2,000 to $5,000 from our joint savings, always on days I was traveling for work. Payments to a P.O. box in Round Rock that didn't correspond to any bill or subscription I recognized, and 3 separate wire transfers to Ridgeline Holdings, totaling $340,000. $340,000. Gone from accounts I'd barely glanced at because my wife told me everything was fine. I ran Ridgeline through the Texas Secretary of State's database. Registered 14 months ago. Registered agent. Victoria Sinclair, attorney at law. I knew that name. Victoria ran a boutique real estate development firm that Megan's practice represented. They'd had dinner at our house. Victoria had complimented my brisket and given Cooper a toy helicopter for his birthday. The LLC's business address was a virtual office in downtown Austin. Its stated purpose was real estate investment and management. On paper, perfectly ordinary. But the registered agent being a client of my wife's firm was a conflict of interest, bright enough to see from space. I kept digging. Property records in Travis County showed that Ridgeline Holdings had purchased a condo in the Seahome district 4 months ago. Purchase price, $785,000. And when I pulled the mortgage application through a contact still at the bureau, a favor I'd call in only once I found 2 names on the loan guarantee. Victoria Sinclair and Derek Hollis. Derek Hollis, my golf partner every other Saturday. Megan's senior partner at the firm, the man who'd stood as godfather at Cooper's baptism. I closed my laptop and sat in the silence of my kitchen for a long time. The coffee maker beeped. A mockingbird sang outside the window. Normal sounds on a day when nothing was normal anymore. Here's what people don't understand about betrayal. It's not one moment. It's a retroactive poisoning of every moment that came before. Every time Derek clapped me on the back after a round of golf. Every time Megan kissed me goodbye before a work trip. Every time the 3 of us sat around this same kitchen table laughing about something I can't even remember, now all of it was contaminated. Every memory rewritten. But I didn't let myself feel it. Not yet. Feelings are a luxury you can't afford in the middle of an investigation, so I made a plan. Over the next 3 weeks, I built a case the way I'd built hundreds before. Methodically, patiently, without leaving fingerprints. I forensically reconstructed our household finances going back 2 years. Megan had siphoned a total of $487,000 from joint accounts, retirement funds, and a home equity line of credit she'd opened using a forged copy of my signature. The money flowed through 3 intermediary accounts before landing in Ridgeline Holdings, which used it as the down payment and renovation budget for the Seahome condo, a property that was now being listed for $1.2 million, with all profits structured to bypass me entirely. She wasn't just cheating, she was building an exit, a financial launchpad for a new life that didn't include me or Cooper. The condo wasn't the only thing I found. Phone records showed Megan calling Derek 20 to 30 times a week, with most calls after 10 p.m. Her firm's internal calendar, accessible through a security vulnerability I identified in their cloud provider, showed recurring client meetings with Derek at the Driskill Hotel on days I traveled. Always the same room, always billed to Ridgeline Holdings. Then I found the passport applications. 2 of them, one for Megan, one for Cooper. Expedited processing filed through a service in Houston. The mailing address was a P.O. box, the same one in Round Rock I'd flagged earlier. She was planning to take my son out of the country. That was the night I almost broke. I was sitting in my car in the garage at 1 a.m., staring at the scanned passport application on my phone, and my hands started shaking. Not from anger, from fear. The primal, gut-level terror of a father realizing someone is trying to take his child. I punched the steering wheel hard enough to split the leather. Then I breathed. Counted to 10. Counted to 10 again. When my hands were steady, I called Rachel Drummond. If you've been through a high-asset divorce in Texas, you know that name. Rachel had represented 3 governors' ex-wives, a tech billionaire, and a retired 4-star general. She didn't advertise. She didn't need to. Her phone number circulated through whisper networks passed from one destroyed spouse to another like a lifeline. She answered on the second ring despite the hour. "Nathan Cross," she said, as if she'd been expecting me. "I've been wondering when you'd call. You know? I know Derek Hollis. He has a pattern. You're the 3rd husband in 5 years whose wife he's gotten involved with. The first 2 didn't fight back. I'm hoping you're different." "I'm different." "Good. Come to my office at 7 a.m. Bring everything." I brought everything. 3 external hard drives, printed financial reconstructions, phone records, property documents, the forged signature on the HELOC, and the passport applications. Rachel spread it across her conference table like a general studying a battlefield map. "The financial fraud alone is enough to bury her in the divorce," Rachel said, flipping through the wire transfer documentation. "But the passport applications change the game entirely. This is evidence of planned parental abduction. We can get an emergency custody order today." "I want more than custody." Rachel looked up, her reading glasses perched on her nose. "Define more." Derek used insider information from Megan's client files to structure the Ridgeline deals. That's securities fraud if the development projects involved any publicly traded entities. Victoria Sinclair signed off on transactions she knew were funded with stolen marital assets. That's conspiracy. And Megan forged my signature on a federal lending document. That's bank fraud. Rachel's expression didn't change, but I caught the slight lift at the corner of her mouth. "You really are different. Give me 48 hours. Those 48 hours were the hardest of my life. I went home. I made dinner. I helped Cooper with his 2nd-grade math homework. I sat across from Megan at the table and listened to her talk about a zoning dispute at work, nodding at the right moments, asking questions that sounded interested. She had no idea. None. And that was perhaps the cruelest revelation of all. How effortlessly she could look me in the eye and perform the role of loving wife while systematically dismantling our life. On Thursday night, Megan announced she had a client dinner and would be home late. I tracked her phone to the Driskill Hotel. Room 412. She didn't come home until 1:30 a.m., smelling of wine and hotel soap. She kissed my forehead as she slipped into bed. "How was dinner?" I asked in the dark. "Boring. Victoria and her investors. You know how it is." "Yeah," I said. "I know exactly how it is." Friday morning, I drove Cooper to school myself instead of putting him on the bus. I walked him to his classroom, knelt down, and hugged him longer than usual. "I love you, buddy. Whatever happens, remember that." He looked at me with those brown eyes, my mother's eyes, thank God, and said, "You're being weird, Dad." "Yeah, I am. Have a good day." At 9 a.m., a process server walked into Megan's office at Hollis, Barrett, and Monroe and handed her a sealed envelope. Simultaneously, Derek received an identical envelope in the conference room where he was meeting with clients. The documents inside included divorce filings, a temporary restraining order, an emergency custody petition, and a detailed financial fraud complaint. At 9:15 a.m., a second courier delivered a package to the Texas State Bar's disciplinary committee. Inside was documentation of Derek's conflicts of interest, his exploitation of client confidential information, and his role in structuring financial transactions designed to defraud a marital estate. At 7:30 a.m., the SEC's Fort Worth regional office received an anonymous but meticulously documented complaint regarding insider trading connected to 2 real estate development projects in which Ridgeline Holdings had invested using material, non-public information obtained from Victoria, Sinclair's firm. At 9:45 a.m., the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit in San Antonio received a referral from a former colleague of mine. The referral concerned bank fraud, specifically a forged signature on a home equity line of credit and potential wire fraud related to interstate transfers of misappropriated funds. By 10 a.m., while I sat in Rachel's office drinking coffee that I couldn't taste, Megan's world was collapsing from 5 directions at once. She called me 17 times in the first hour. I didn't answer. Derek called twice. Then his phone went silent, probably on advice of whatever attorney he'd managed to reach. Victoria Sinclair, the architect of their financial scheme, tried to board a flight to Miami at 2 p.m. She was met at the gate by 2 FBI agents, who politely suggested she postpone her travel plans. The part I almost lost? It came 3 days later. Megan hired Carter Webb as her attorney. Webb was a showman, more media strategist than lawyer. His first move was a press leak painting me as an abusive, controlling husband who'd used his FBI connections to fabricate evidence against his innocent wife. The story ran on a local news blog, then got picked up by 2 TV stations. Former FBI agent accused of weaponizing federal resources in bitter divorce. For 48 hours, I was the villain. My company's board called an emergency meeting. My CEO asked me to take a leave of absence until things settled down. Parents at Cooper's school whispered when I picked him up. One mother actually pulled her child away from Cooper on the playground. That one almost broke me worse than the receipt. I called Rachel in a moment of genuine panic. This is spinning out of control. He's turning public opinion against me before we even get to court. Rachel's voice was calm, almost bored. Nathan, you built a case against drug cartels who had actual hitmen. Carter Webb has a blog post. Breathe. My son is being ostracized at school because of this. A pause. Then softer. I know. That's why we end this fast. Webb made a mistake going public. He put claims on record that we can disprove with documentation. Every lie he told to the press becomes impeachment material at the hearing. He handed us the rope. Now we let him hang himself with it. She was right. She was absolutely right. But knowing that and feeling it were different things entirely. The custody hearing was scheduled for the following Tuesday at the Travis County Family Court. Megan arrived with Carter Webb and a female associate, dressed in a navy, cardigan, and minimal makeup, the standard sympathetic victim wardrobe that divorce attorneys keep in their closets for court days. She looked exhausted, which I suppose she was. Having your entire financial escape plan dismantled in a week will do that. I sat across the aisle with Rachel, a single banker's box of documents between us. Webb had carted in 3 boxes and a rolling file cabinet. In my experience, the side with more paper usually has less truth. Judge Patricia Moreno ran a tight courtroom. She opened by addressing Webb's media campaign directly. Counselor, I've seen the press coverage your office generated. I want to be crystal clear this court's decisions will be based on evidence presented in this room, not narratives constructed for cameras. If I determine that either party has attempted to manipulate these proceedings through public pressure, there will be consequences. Are we understood? Webb smiled his television smile. Absolutely, Your Honor. Rachel presented our case with surgical efficiency. Financial records showing the siphoning of $487,000. The forged HELOC signature, verified by a handwriting expert. The Ridgeline Holdings paper trail connecting Megan, Derek, and Victoria. The hotel records. The passport applications. When it came time for the single most devastating piece of evidence, Rachel placed one document on the overhead projector, 1 page. It was a spreadsheet, not a complex forensic reconstruction, just a simple, single-page financial summary I'd prepared showing every dollar Megan had taken, where it went, and what it became. Dates, amounts, source accounts, destination accounts, and the current asset value. At the bottom, a single line. Net marital assets diverted without spouse's knowledge or consent, $487,000. Current value of assets acquired with diverted funds, $1,340,000. 1 page that told the entire story. A decade and a half of trust, reduced to columns and rows that proved it was all a lie. Webb attempted his counterattack. He put Megan on the stand, where she tearfully described years of emotional isolation from a husband obsessed with work and control. She claimed the financial transfers were her attempt to build independence from an overbearing spouse. The passport applications were just research for a family vacation she'd wanted to surprise me with. Rachel's cross-examination lasted 11 minutes. She asked Megan to explain why her family vacation research didn't include a passport application for me, why her independence fund was co-owned with her firm's senior partner, why the emotional isolation she described began exactly 18 months ago. The same week phone records showed her first call to Derek lasting over an hour after midnight. Megan couldn't answer, not convincingly. Webb objected repeatedly, but Judge Moreno overruled him each time with increasing impatience. The moment that sealed it came when Rachel asked one final question. Mrs. Cross, Can you explain why Ridgeline Holdings LLC purchased a $785,000 condominium with your husband's money, listed your affair partner as co-guarantor on the mortgage, and is now preparing to sell that property for a $455,000 profit, none of which your husband would have ever seen? Megan looked at Webb. Webb looked at his notes. The silence lasted 4 full seconds. I'd like to invoke my Fifth Amendment right, Megan finally said. In a civil custody hearing, you're allowed to invoke the Fifth. But unlike criminal court, the judge can draw adverse inferences from your refusal to answer. Judge Moreno's expression made it clear she was drawing plenty. The ruling came the same afternoon. Full custody to me. Megan received supervised visitation every other weekend, contingent on completion of a financial accountability program, a creative provision Rachel had suggested. The court froze all Ridgeline Holdings assets pending resolution of the financial fraud claims, and a referral was made to the district attorney's office regarding the forged HELOC signature. Megan cried when the judge read the order. Real tears this time, not the performed kind from her testimony. Webb put a hand on her shoulder and was already on his phone before they left the courtroom, probably calling his media contacts to spin the loss. Outside, the October sun was warm on my face. Rachel walked beside me to the parking lot, her heels clicking on the concrete. How do you feel? She asked. I thought about it honestly. Empty. That's normal. The adrenaline has nowhere to go now. What happens to Derek? The bar complaint is moving forward. 3 other former clients have come forward since word got out. His partnership is already dissolved. Barrett and Monroe voted him out last Thursday. And the SEC investigation will take months, but the preliminary findings are not favorable for him. Victoria, cooperating with the FBI in exchange for reduced charges. She's given them everything on the Ridgeline structure. Turns out your wife and Derek weren't her only clients with creative financial arrangements. I nodded. And Megan? Rachel stopped walking and faced me. That depends on the DA. The forged signature is a federal offense. If they pursue it, she's looking at real consequences. If they don't, she's still lost custody, her reputation, her career standing, and most of the assets she tried to steal. Either way, she's starting over. She's still Cooper's mother. She is. And the supervised visitation ensures he'll have a relationship with her, on safe terms. I drove to Cooper's school and picked him up early. He was surprised to see me at noon on a Tuesday. I took him to Zilker Park, and we threw a football around on the great lawn until we were both sweating and laughing. Dad, he said, catching a wobbly spiral. Yeah? Are you and Mom getting a divorce? Kids know. They always know, even when you think you're hiding it. Yeah, buddy. We are. He was quiet for a moment, turning the football over in his hands. Is it because she did something bad? I knelt down so we were eye to eye. Sometimes grown-ups make choices that hurt other people. Your mom made some choices that mean we can't be married anymore. But she still loves you, and I still love you. And that part is never, ever going to change. Okay, he threw the ball back to me. Can we get tacos? We can absolutely get tacos. 6 months later, the dust had settled into something resembling a new normal. I'd bought a house in Dripping Springs, 20 minutes outside Austin, on 3 acres with enough room for Cooper to run, and a workshop where I'd started building furniture, something I never had time for when I was chasing criminals or chasing quarterly targets. My company had welcomed me back after Webb's accusations evaporated under scrutiny. The CEO personally apologized. I accepted, but I'd already started consulting independently. The freedom suited me. Derek Hollis was disbarred in March. The SEC investigation resulted in civil penalties exceeding $2 million, and his assets were frozen pending resolution. He'd moved to a rental apartment in San Marcos. The last I heard, he was working as a paralegal at a personal injury mill, which struck me as a particularly fitting form of purgatory for a man who'd once billed $800 an hour. Victoria Sinclair pleaded guilty to 1 count of wire fraud and received 18 months of probation plus restitution. Her development firm was dissolved. She'd started a consulting business helping other entrepreneurs navigate regulatory compliance, which I suppose is one way to rebrand your criminal history. And Megan. She completed the court-ordered program, and the supervised visits had gone well according to the social worker's reports. Cooper came home from those weekends quieter than usual but not unhappy. She'd taken a position at a small firm in San Antonio, a significant step down from her former career, but she was working, rebuilding. She called me one evening in April, after dropping Cooper off. Nathan, I know I have no right to ask you anything, but I want you to know I'm sorry. Not because of what I lost, because of what I did to you and Cooper. I stood on my porch, watching fireflies blink across the field. I appreciate you saying that. I know it doesn't fix anything. No, it doesn't. A long pause. He asks about you all week, you know. Counts the days until he comes home to your house. You're a good father, Nathan. You always were. I was just too selfish to see what I had. After I hung up, Cooper appeared in the doorway in his pajamas, holding the football. Who was that? Your mom. She says she loves you. I know. He sat down next to me on the porch steps. Dad, can we get a dog? I looked at my son, his hair sticking up on one side from the pillow, his feet bare on the wooden step, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Not victory, not vindication, just peace. Yeah, I said. I think we're ready for a dog. The next Saturday, we drove to the Austin Animal Shelter, and Cooper picked out a three-legged mutt named Biscuit, who licked his face so aggressively that he fell over laughing on the shelter floor. We brought Biscuit home, and he immediately claimed the couch as his territory, which Cooper declared was the best thing that ever happened. I watched them from the kitchen, the boy and the three-legged dog wrestling on the couch in the golden late afternoon light, and I thought about receipts, about how a single piece of paper can unravel a life or save one, about how the same skills I'd spent years using to bring down strangers had ultimately protected the one person who mattered most. Some people ask me if I regret how I handled it, if I went too far, if the systematic destruction of three people's careers and reputations was proportional to what they'd done. I think about the forged signature, the stolen money, the passport applications filed in secret, the plan to take my son to a country where I might never have found him. And I think about Cooper on that playground watching other kids pull away because a lawyer with a media strategy decided to make his father the villain. Nah, I don't regret it. Not one bit. The money they stole, most of it came back through the courts. The trust they broke, that's gone forever. But the life I built from the wreckage, the house in the hills, the workshop, the dog, the Saturday morning pancakes with my son, that's mine. They can't touch it. And every night when I tuck Cooper in and he says, "Love you, Dad," with that easy certainty that only a 7-year-old can muster, I know exactly why I did what I did. Not for revenge. For him.